Hello Wonderland, Kelly here. Let me show you what we're doing today. So yeah, today I've come all the way to my backyard where I have some feeders set up and get pretty good bird action. We're right across a field from the woods, so a lot of birds come in from the woods over to my feeders. And I get a pretty good variety, so yeah, it's not a bad little test bed. So I did a video a while back, you might have seen, where I took the 800mm RF f11 lens and I coupled it with the 1.4x RF teleconverter and put that on my R5 for 1120mm f16. And I gave that a go at one of the parks not too far from here. And that came out pretty well. But I had a comment on that video where someone asked, okay, but how's it do with a crop sensor camera? And I didn't have the R7 when I filmed that video, but I do now. So that's what I'm doing. I've got it on the R7 with the teleconverter, the 800mm, and I'm shooting here in the backyard. I'm maybe 40 feet from the feeders, so still pretty close to the birds. But my thought using that combo was that it would be difficult to track small, fast-moving birds. Difficult to acquire them, first of all, because the field of view is so small at effectively, now I forget the math, but I think it's almost 1900mm with the crop factor, effectively. Yeah, so that's a long way. Tiny little field of view that you're trying to work with. So my thought was it would probably be best for larger birds at a distance that aren't moving very much, so like waterfowl on water, raptors hanging out in trees, that sort of thing. But I was playing with it a bit yesterday, and I'm not having too much trouble acquiring small birds, as long as they're, relatively still. Once they alight on the fence or the feeder, then I can grab them fairly quickly and get some shots. Obviously, being f16 makes it a little tricky. The lens wants a lot of light to be sharp and get good exposure, especially with the teleconverter. It's even worse. So yesterday I was shooting mostly around 1600 ISO. Today I'm actually going to crank that up because I edited the photos that I took yesterday mostly, and they came out pretty good. So I'm going to get some more at a higher ISO today and see if I can clean that up in post too. So yeah, let's do it. So most of what I see back here are fairly common, of course. You got your chickadees, tufted titmouse, cardinals, lots of cardinals, a few kinds of sparrows usually. I get some woodpeckers, mostly downies and red-bellied, which is nice. Now and then a pileated I'll see. Nuthatch. A lot of robins right now because we're at the beginning of spring. So yeah, yesterday I got a pretty good variety. Today we'll see what we can get. I want to get some video today too. I didn't really do video yesterday, so see how this combo works for that. Of course, right now they're all off, but I hear them. Ooh, there's a cardinal. Seeing some stuff. What's that? Dial you in, goldfinch. They're not very pretty this time of year because they've just molted. Or they're due to molt. They get their bright colors a little later. Anyway, so in terms of image quality with this setup, since I did take some pictures yesterday and process them, I can speak to that a bit. So it's not perfect. Like I said, at f11, this lens kind of needs a lot of light for sharpness. Otherwise, the noise washes out what detail there might be. And sometimes you've got to crank the ISO up to get a good exposure, which also has a cost in terms of sharpness. But I was getting pretty decent results. Like I said, not great compared to my 1:500. Definitely not in the same ballpark sharpness wise, but you don't really lose much with the teleconverter. And then cleaning up in post is not that bad. I'm using DxO PureRAW 2 to remove noise when I'm shooting at high ISO, and that works really well. PureRAW 3 just came out. I'm thinking about upgrading. It adds a new level of noise reduction that apparently makes a difference, so I might invest in that. And then for sharpening, I have a few things, but I've been really using Luminar Neo as my main sharpening. It has an AI sharpener called Super Sharp, which works pretty well. And maybe if I can figure out how to do it, I'll walk through my post-processing on some of these, and I'll definitely show you some before and afters, so you can see what kind of sharpness you get right out of the camera and what you can turn that into, because that's what matters. All right. So let me shoot some more video out here. The sun is lowering in the sky, but I still have some time here, so I'll see who shows up. Yeah. All right, as I'm sure you can see, the sun is getting lower, so starting to lose my light. And there's not quite as much action now, so I think I will pack it in for now. Hopefully show you some stuff back at the computer. Not a bad afternoon. Spring is nearly here. Future Kelly here, and I mean way future. I've been hanging on this video for way too long to record this part, as a matter of fact, because I haven't really done anything at the computer for you guys yet. So I want to get more into showing you some editing tips and tricks along the way. But in this case, I also wanted to give you a good close-up look at the shots that I was getting with the R7 and the 800mm plus the 1.4x teleconverter, which you're already watching the video, so you know that. So anyway, I'm going to take you onto the computer here. I'm using Lightroom Classic, is what I use. I've selected a few of the photos to give you a look at. All right, so I'm going to start with this little titmouse right here. Cute little guy. You can see it looks pretty good zoomed out, or at full size. This is uncropped, unedited, raw, straight out of camera. So if I zoom in, you can kind of see what I was talking about. It's not perfectly sharp because the 800 is just not a perfectly sharp lens, but it looks pretty decent. You can get some feather detail in here. And as far as noise goes, you can see that's definitely there. This is only at ISO 800, which is not too bad, but there's no noise reduction at all since I'm working raw here. So you can see it's decent, but it's not great. So let's edit this real quick. And one of the main tricks that I want to show you guys, first I'm going to run it through DxO PureRAW 2, which I have found to be fantastic. So yeah, I use the deep prime. There's PureRAW 3 now that adds another level of deep prime, which is really good. I did try the demo, but for now PureRAW 2 still works for me, so I'm not planning to upgrade just yet, but I will process it. Deep prime takes, on my computer, about 10 seconds per image, which is not terrible. And then it will re-import it as a DNG. which it has done. So if I zoom in here, you can see the noise is gone, which is the main idea, but it also brought out some more feather detail in the sharpening and optical corrections that it did. So I think that looks pretty darn good. Even sharpened up the talons a little bit, even though that wasn't quite in focus because I was focused here around the eye and the head. So then if I wanted to edit this, I'm just going to kind of start from scratch. Overall tone looks pretty good to me. I like to add, usually I use presets, but I'm going to go from scratch here. So I'm going to add just a little bit of texture, again, to bring out a little more of that detail. Actually going to come down to sharpening as well. If you hold the Alt key while you move this masking slider, assuming you have some sharpening applied already, you get this view, so you can really tone in your masking and to what you want to sharpen and not sharpen. So I usually go a bit of sharpening, a bit of detail, and again, that just, you don't want to do too much. You start to get that little artifacting, but that looks pretty good to me. Again, tone looks good. I'm going to up the saturation a little bit, and the vibrance, it's already pretty well white balanced. Color profile is something I like to change, so it defaults to Adobe Color. I found the camera matching profiles in here tend to bring out a bit more of the Canon color, which I do like. So I use landscape a bit, and you can see that made it a bit more vivid, also a bit more blue on the bird. Standard is probably about what I want here. So that's good. This to me is a distraction, so I am going to remove that. I found the AI, the new eraser, works pretty well, especially for stuff like that. Give me a little bit of extra there. And it's almost good. Could probably make this a little bigger. There we go. Still see a little bit there. I'm going to switch that actually to the healing tool instead. That'll make it a little more smooth. There we go. Birdie looks pretty good. I'm going to add a quick radial mask on him. Or her. Could be her. Just to brighten it a little bit. A bit more shadow action. Touch up on the highlights. And then I tend to like to add a little bit of post-crop vignette, even though I didn't crop this at all. Just to kind of focus the light, if you will, on the bird. And I call that pretty good. Go back here. Again, it re-imported it as a DNG. So if I want to go back to my collection here, I coded the ones blue that I wanted to work with. I'm in the wrong folder. There we are. Now, this female cardinal, I liked this with the backlighting and her crest standing up like that, but again, if you look, this is at ISO 800 again. Bit of noise because I haven't removed any. Sharpness, I feel like this one missed focus just a little bit. The wing feathers actually look pretty good, but it's not entirely sharp down there, and of course the head and feathers leave a little something to be desired. So I'm going to run this again through PureRAW 2. And then when we get our DNG, we can take a look. So it was able to pull out some feather detail down through the cheek here. The beak looks pretty good. It didn't really sharpen these chin feathers or the crest too much, but when you're zoomed out, it doesn't look too bad. So this dust spot is bothering me immediately, so I'm gonna take care of that. Super quick. I'm gonna brighten this up just a little, and some shadows. Again with the texture, maybe a touch of clarity on this one. I like my saturation and vibrance up a bit. Sharpening again. Mask it to the bird. It's coming out pretty well, I would say. Beak is almost a little too red to me. Tone that down just a touch and maybe brighten it as well. And add some vignetting. And my radial, I could mask to a subject filter, but I tend to like to use these gradients. And that's a little bit too, there we go. Fit that back in. Brighten him up a little. More on the shadows. I'm going to give it a little more saturation and maybe even warm, just a touch. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. Now, let me see if I can show you a higher ISO example. This is 1600, this is 6400, so here we go. Oops, 100%. So you can see this is significantly more noisy. Not perfectly focused either, so this might be interesting to see what we can come up with here. So if I again process PureRAW 2. This is a black-capped chickadee, by the way. Or Carolina chickadee. I forget. Oh man, I forget. It's a chickadee at any rate. But you can see, noise is not completely gone, but it's a lot better. I think that's where PureRAW 3 has a little bit of an advantage. It would probably get rid of a bit more of this. But the bird itself looks a little bit sharper. A little more there on the feet. So this one I am going to go ahead and do a preset. I really like this preset by Brent Hall, who's another photographer that I follow. It's kind of become my go-to preset, his Bluebird Slope Day. I just like what it does with the colors and the tones. I'm going to brighten him up, a bit more shadow. So there you can see we've kind of brightened his head a bit. This little bug flitting about is a distraction. Here is my, oh, there we are. Get rid of him real quick. Otherwise, not too shabby. Let's, I like the tones. I'm going to make my green a little more green. I do that quite a bit, actually. And even the yellows, just to make him pop a little more against that background. A little bit of vignetting, like I like. My radial gradient on the birdie. And here, just a little shadow, a little texture, maybe some clarity as well. Exposure's actually decent. I'll just notch that up a little. And it's not perfect, but if you're not pixel peeping, if you're just sharing this at, web resolution of 1024 or something like that, that would look pretty good. And there you go. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how sharp the lens is or isn't. And it's not perfectly sharp, but it's not bad either. Definitely usable, as I hope you can see. All right. So in the future, I'll show you some more stuff in Lightroom, hopefully. That'll be fun. Okay, back to old me. Not bad at all. Well, I hope this was useful and instructive and informative. Hope you enjoyed it. Guess you know the drill. Thanks for liking and subscribing and all that good YouTube stuff. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Don't forget to be awesome. Get out and wander. Later.